Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning. It's happening? 11:30. Let's learn something, shall we? Or not. I mean, I'm hoping we shall. I can't force you to do anything. I'll highly encourage you to. Hey, we got like 2 weeks. We got a lot of stuff going on, and I bet there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of stuff floating around your head, maybe a little anxiety around this project. First and foremost, let me say your learning is what I care about. And if you can demonstrate to me that, then consider it a success. Because one of the most challenging things in all of these projects is data collection. I know it is, and so right now you're thinking, we launched our survey. We've tried to find some different ways to collect sample. I sent out that email yesterday, trying to do the best we can to recruit participants as much as we can. So I want to start today by getting some updates from your team on where you stand, because we haven't looked at this or thought about this for a little while. Second, also to alleviate some of that anxiety, I want you to start thinking and take some time with your team. Maybe we don't do it exactly today, but maybe we do it at like 12:45, where you start thinking about scheduling some time with me to work on your analysis. I'm not hanging it out to dry. That's not my goal here. It can stretch me a little thin from time to time, but my goal, as I stated, is for your learning. So I think a lot of that takes place when you have your hands on something that's yours and you want to take ownership, get the best story and the best results from that you possibly can. Also, what's not up there is that you got a final exam in like 9 days, and that can be a bit of anxiety, I bet, as well. I can tell you that the topics that are going to be covered on that, by the way, it will be in class on Thursday, next Thursday, last day of class. Oh, that sounds so soon. It's the stuff that we're doing in class. The expectation is not that you go back to that you go back and read all the chapters in the textbook. Although the types of things that were discussed on your midterm, I think you can expect to see again. If you only have 50 minutes to complete the task, I can't take you too in depth, but I can ask you specific questions about levels of measurement. Ask you to do some analysis, not like numerical analysis, but to critique a question, provide an alternate way of collecting data based on what I asked for, set up some scenarios that ask you for the appropriate statistical test, which is why we spend today and Thursday really focused on that. Partly in context for the SPSS assignment, which is due Friday, as well as the context of analyzing data to answer a couple of questions for your project. Trying to find the way to craft this so it's a single narrative and not disjointed as we may have started this semester, not disjointed as the sort of, I'll say schizophrenic, like pulling in different pieces, different voices, but not being able to say, this is what I want you to learn. So sort of found a bit of a groove with that, and that's what you can expect for your exam on Thursday. Not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So that's a bit of a preview. And welcome back. Happy Thanksgiving and all the wonderful stuff. Sometimes I cut right to the chase and get to business. Put some time off or time away or just time, as it were. Tough weekend.
Yeah.
Tough team. The captain was a pretty big girl.
Yeah.
Is that right?
She was huge.
She was huge. All right.
Yeah,
she was huge. Monster. But I mean, not like just in a she towered over. But keep fighting. But not like dropping the gloves, because then you get put in the box and you feel shame, and you don't want to have that experience. And then I hope that you've had a chance to get into the SPSS assignment, because what I want to get today is a bit like what we talked about last time. I had this set up so that you have the opportunity to ask questions, demo. I may even give you the steering wheel if you want to demonstrate some stuff, and I can guide you that way. but it's going to be more beneficial if you've taken a look at it. Perhaps even if you started writing some syntax, or you've got some notes or some things that you want to do. We've got Slack as an easy way to share files, and I can just pull it up and run it that way. If you've already got some stuff written and you want to know if it's looks right, if you're on the right track. And then for Thursday, we'll probably split some time between maybe a little bit more of this if you're still grinding towards that goal, but also a bit more of looking forward to the end of the semester, because the final exam will be shortly thereafter. So let me start with team updates, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start over here. Where are we in terms of sample or data collection, or questions that you have regarding that?
So, sorry, we have 50 responses so far.
Okay.
But remember we simulated the data in class? Is that gonna like have an impact? Because right now it's saying 157 responses.
Right. So there's a couple of different ways that you can tackle that. One of the, I would say, simple and dirty sort of ways is once you download the data, export it from SPSS, you just go in and delete all the records that in the column that say test or anonymous or something like that. There's indicators that these were dummy responses. So you just delete them and then you move forward. There's also an opportunity there to export only after a certain date. I don't know that that's, I mean, I said the other way is dirty. I don't know that this is any cleaner because you still don't know exactly which records you're eliminating. But that's all you have to worry about. And data cleaning, and I say the words dirty and clean, data cleaning is the technical term for removing non-responses, removing dummy responses, removing people who straight lined or sped. I mean, not things I'm looking for from you in this context, but if there's somebody who gave like one response and everything else is blank, I would probably delete that record and feel justified in doing so. This is a non-respondent, or if they just responded to like 3 or 4 questions, but not the whole thing, you're not really going to get a whole lot of information from them as well. So that's pretty early stage. Once you export your data and say, all right, we have stopped data collection officially on December 3rd at noon or whatever you do, and just say, boom, I'm done. And you say, this is our snapshot. This is our point in time. Does that clarify that? Mm-hmm. Cool. I imagine maybe other teams have questions on that as well, but we'll make our way around. Other questions?
I don't have any question about that.
The when and the dummy responses?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Cool. Moving up, you posted something on LinkedIn, is that right?
Yeah.
Right on. Way to try to get some of that reach. Yeah. Where are we, or thoughts or questions?
We have 154 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, but I guess because we have so many people, we have 8 people.
Yeah.
But I just looked on my LinkedIn too, and like 900 people have viewed my post. So I'm sure that has something. I think LinkedIn is actually helping us a lot. But right after I posted that, I feel like it went up.
That's pretty awesome.
LinkedIn too. Like, I feel like it actually made such a difference. And we have like a decent amount of adults that have taken it, which is I didn't expect. Like I thought we would have to struggle to get adults to take it.
Yeah, even if it's just a handful, like 20 or 30 people outside of the 18 to 22s, that's I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
It may not be the focus of your analysis. It may be a one-off little thing. Yeah, hey, the 34 people who are over the age of 30 have similar or different opinions, but heck yeah. Well done. Way to leverage the network. Up top?
We only have 78.
Only? That's pretty good. Well, I mean, all right. So here's my perspective. I think Ainsley's asked her students, Dr. Schultz has asked her students to get a minimum of 100. I'm not setting minimums on this because data collection is my nemesis. I hate it. It's the worst. But it's not the worst. It's like second worst. But you got a little more time. I'm not sure. Did you either team hear from Andrew? I asked him to, send this out in your link. This is when we want to close because for basketball, there's a game. Is it Brown? And then RIT is coming up for the men's hockey team. One of them's Friday, one of them's Wednesday. And I said, when you send this out, they're good punctuation marks or bookends for things. Say, yeah, we're going to stop data collection at the start of this game, so make sure you get your stuff in. Any word? No? All right. Where are you in terms of sample?
Because it hasn't gotten like sent out. We only have 5.
Okay.
So
see if you can leverage some of your social media. Caroline's had some luck with LinkedIn. Feel free to use Facebook and LinkedIn or whatever you.
Even though we mostly said our sample was going to come from like that list of students that were getting it.
See what you can do.
Just get numbers.
Yeah, and if we need to screen or clean based on characteristics for the analysis, then we say that that's part of our sample description. Bless you. Was not simply those people. If you want, if given the nature of your study, if you want me to ping Andrew and Katie just to see where they are on it, I can do that today around 2:30. And then if you want to just hold off maybe until the evening, or maybe I can get maybe he'll hit me back in the afternoon and then say, all right, here's where he's on this. And then we go forward from there. So yeah, I can do a little bit of that. And Sam, any word on launch from Andrew or Katie? We're on the no side of things. Yeah, no. So if you haven't heard, you haven't heard, right? Yeah. Okay. But 78 right on is good. 5. We're gonna work on that number. But again, like, I'm not gonna hold you responsible in terms of your project here as being, you only have 5 responses. Your project is a failure. That's not a thing at all. My last semester at UConn, last 2 semesters, I worked with the communication club to do a huge fundraiser. But we only ended up getting like 20 people to show up for the final event, which was a bummer. And to the department chair, she said that's a failure because only 20 people showed up. But in my eyes, we had like 6 different teams all working on different aspects. Sure, we could have done a little bit better with the PR, but we had people coordinating all sorts of different things. The students learned, they got to take on leadership roles. And to me, like, that's the learning piece. So if you get hamstrung because your sample doesn't come in, it doesn't take anything away from the design. Maybe it's something that they want to use and launch later. Like, that's pretty valuable in and of itself. And if you learn something about design, then like, thumbs up to that. So I know data collection can be an anxious time because it's sort of out of your control. That was before break. I was like, you launch and then you wait. Sure, there's other things you can do. You can start working on your presentation. You can write some of the syntax. There are things you can do. But when you're just waiting for other people to do things that you need them to do, that can be a little tense. But I'm here for you. Try to help you out. Other questions regarding your study or anything like that? Cool. The schedule analysis piece, do take a moment to talk to your teams. Try to get on my calendar sooner rather than later. If you know that there's normal times that your team or teams are not maybe even not everybody from your team can or wants to meet with me to start planning out your syntax and taking a look at what you have, and not just your syntax but your analysis as well. I'm ready to be hands-on with your stuff because I know you haven't done it very much before, and that's not what I want you to do. I want you to leave the project having some sort of script or something that you've written and be like, all right, so now I know what this stuff does, and if somebody asks me down the line if I've got any familiarity with it, whether you're pursuing research or not, it's at least a little something nice to have handy in your portfolio. So, I made this, I did this. So again, that's what we're after here. So 15 minutes now, 60 to go. Who's gotten their feet wet in terms of the SPS assignment? Who's taking a look at it? All right, teams looked at it a little bit. We're still, all right, we've read the assignment. Yeah, you can be candid with me at this point. That's the only way I can help you. Where are we getting stuck? How can I help? Do you have specific questions? I want to start by listening. So talk to me.
For task 1, you write, please indicate how many levels or groups each measure contains. Does that mean like ranking them in order of the most accurate level?
Nope. So level of measurement for each of the 6 variables. So we've got 6 different variables in this data set. Which is, I mean, this is the Excel version. Respondent ID, location, attitude, importance, gender, that's 7. I don't really care about respondent ID, although it's nominal. Level of measurement for location. Nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Nominal. Why, Matt?
It doesn't give you a number. Well,
It's just a location. It's a word, it's a category, it's a place. So we look at here the question, where did you watch the Super Bowl? 1 is at a bar, 2 is at a party, 3 is at home. It's not ordinal. It's not like one of these places is closer or farther or better or worse. It's just if somebody watched it at a bar, they selected 1. So the level of measurement for each of the 6 variables, 1, nominal. So then we've got these attitude measures. Presumably they're all measured at the same level. Importance is a different type of question. It may be nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio. Gender may be nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio, but it's up to you to tell me what those levels of measurement are. Identify the level of measurement, check the box and move on. Make sense? Cool. That was easy. That only took like 2 minutes. Harder question?
Well, what is the second part of the question?
Oh, what's the second part of the question?
Please indicate how many levels or groups.
Yeah, the
each
groups I
measure.
think is.
Yeah.
Oh! All right, Matt, go back to
Is
location.
that like how many answers there are? So for location, there's 3 answers.
Yeah, there's 3 groups.
different levels, so
Yeah.
groups.
3 different levels, 3 different groups.
So
Yeah.
groups really means answer choices, like
Yeah.
provided.
So
Okay.
then for the attitude ones, there's 7 different levels.
Yep.
Okay. Just enough.
Yeah. It's like the Inferno.
Wait, so
No?
All right.
Dante?
can
All
you
right.
say that again? So when you say levels or groups, they're just the same thing? That means the same thing?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess levels has alternate definitions. So specifically level of measurement, this is, that's a specific technical term. Levels or groups, that's alternate terms, just meaning like there are 3 groups: at home, at a bar, at work, or whatever. 3 groups.
So if it's like, I guess the first one, like attitude 1, when it's strongly agree to strongly disagree, have these 7 groups. Okay,
Yep.
Like forget levels, like
they're the same thing.
synonymous.
So,
Because the way that we had been looking at it was there was like, for example, group. So like say attitude 1.
Yep.
We were like, oh, there's 7 levels.
Yep.
Because those are all different
Yep.
levels of agreement. And then we were trying to group them, so we said, oh, 2 groups, people who agree and people who don't agree.
Okay,
Does that make sense though?
it does.
So then they're not synonymous.
Then what are not synonymous here?
Level and group.
Like it's not the same.
It's not.
So if you decide to group, that's a decision you make as the analyst.
Okay, so that's.
But
that's
as-
subjective.
Yeah, as the data exists, there's 7 types of agreement.
Okay.
Strongly agree, somewhat agree, neutral, somewhat disagree, strongly.
So for each one, we should have identified at least levels or groups. So
Yeah.
like attitude 1, we have 7 levels. 2 groups is just like an add-on, like that's subjective. But then looking at location, like.
So I don't need you to, back to that one though, I don't need you to group agreement, people who agree and people who disagree. I don't need you to create that.
So at least one applies.
Yes.
Okay.
the number
Yeah,
of
yeah,
kids
so
are
it can
advanced.
be-
Yeah, I mean, I guess 7 would be an answer that is acceptable and also correct.
Okay.
Like, if you wanna turn task 1 into like an essay, and you're like, well, then we decided to analytically, like, that's correct too, but I feel like your efforts could be better spent elsewhere. All right, I don't know, just talk to me. You decide, work this out.
Mine's on task 4.
All right,
Okay.
we're on 3. I got 3, I got 4, I got 3, I got 3, I got 2. Got 2s anywhere? I got task 2.
We just had a question about 2. When you say
You need to recode one of these items.
Yeah,
Can you explain what that means?
yeah.
Like,
So,
by recode?
yeah, so check out these, yeah. So, how much you agree with the following items. So if I say the Super Bowl commercials were great this year, strongly agree to strongly disagree, where 7 is strongly agree. You with me on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way they're coded. So if someone tells me a 7, or sorry, if the data says 7, someone didn't tell me 7, someone told me strongly agree. This year's Super Bowl's commercial, 7, strongly agree. Now in terms of, let's call it valence or direction. If you agree with statement 1, is that a smiley face or a frowning face?
Right.
2, I did not enjoy Super Bowl commercials this year. 3,
Brown, so you want to see what he said. 27.
yep. All right, so let's, this is our data. We'll go to SPSS. Let's open some data on the desktop. Nothing's here, so we pick the XLS, and there's our Super Bowl data. We open it because it's in Excel. Okay. Now the data exists, and that should look familiar because it looks pretty identical to what we see here. I'm going to save this now because I've basically taken the Excel, turned it into an SAV file. I'm going to save this as sbdata.sav to the desktop. Now it's saved there. SBData. There we go. So now when I do my syntax, now this is getting back to the question of recoding, excuse me. Open data, SB data, paste, then it'll run. So run. Now the data is active. There is a recode command, which will allow you to choose whichever of those 3 variables that needed to be recoded, which I believe was this one, right? Let's see, did I put any hints in here? I bet I did. I hope I did. I think I did. Was that task 3?
You said
2.
transform, right?
Scroll down.
What was your notes?
Ah, transform to recode. So thank you, Jeff, for hinting and reminding me. Transform. You can recode it into the same variable or recode it into a different variable. I'm just going to recode it into the same variable.
Does it matter which one you do?
Yes.
So would it be different?
Sorry?
Why are you recording it into the same variable?
Just because I want to flip 1s to 7s and 7s to 1s and so on. But I could, if I wanted to, recode into a different variable. And this is actually probably what I would do. Attitude 3R, which means I've reversed it.
Right. Wait, so what's the difference then between doing it same versus different? Because we did different.
Yeah, so here's the difference between recoding into the same variable and the different variable. The data that exists here, which is also the data that currently exists. You can't see it because the window's popped up, but it's the same data. Let's say you recode it into the same variable and then resave the data. Resave the SAV file. Now, when you match the data that you've now flipped, because remember it's flipped and saved, and you come back to your code book, if you don't remember that you've flipped it, you're going to look at those numbers and things aren't going to seem like all the smiley faces line up with other smiley faces, because you may forget that you flipped the data. This will happen sometimes, in my experience, if people don't explain this better. If people don't document the steps along the way. Because for me, this is a step. Like this right here, this reps the raw data. And then this step flips the data for attitude 3, right? Now let's say I execute this, and then I save the data again. I'm going to look at the numbers for attitude 3. If I don't remember, or let's say you're all working on a team, and Rachel flips it, then resaves the data, and then Adriana goes to work on it, and she flips the data. Now it's been flipped twice, and you don't have any evidence that it was flipped twice. You both think you flipped it. You both think that it's now working in the right direction, but it's not. So recoding it into a different variable means these things stay verbatim, the way the respondent provided the response. But then when you make a new variable, you know, I transformed those things because attitude 3 was a frowny face 7 as opposed to happy face 7. And then you're going to start working with attitude 1, attitude 2, and this reverse coded attitude 3, because then they're all valenced in the same direction. And if you created an index such as an average, you would know that an average of 6.5 meant something very positive. Whereas if 2 of these are smiley face big numbers and 1 of these is a frowny face big number, positive and negatively balanced, you take an average of these 3 items as they exist, and it doesn't make any sense, because 2 of them are positive, 1 of them is negative, and then the index or the average of the 3 is taking some of it in one direction, some of it in the other. If you're going to take an average or combine it in some way, they all need to be optimized in the same direction. They're all positive. Mostly it's part of the data cleaning process of making sure your data represents what you believe it to represent. That a 7 means that we liked things. But right now, for attitude 3, 7 means dislike. So by recoding, and I would generally recode into a different variable. Although, if you want, you can record it into the same variable. You and all your team members need to remember that you have flipped it, so that if you go back to your code book, this is no longer what we're after, but this is actually what we have. Make sense? Give me that look like you're almost the way there, Jackie.
Like, is this basically replacing, if it's in columns, attitude 1, 2, 3, is the same variable recode replacing attitude 3, the column, or is it adding a new one?
If you recode it into the same variable, it replaces.
Right.
If you recode into a new variable, it adds a variable.
Right, so,
Can we get a difference if you have?
yeah. So if we have the new column and we take the mean of the new column with the attitude 1 and 2, that's still getting the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter which way we choose, it's just knowing
If you've
that
recoded them both,
No, we just did
No.
one. We just did. Right? We just
Oh,
did
you mean
two.
like later on in the mean?
right. So if you recode into the same variable, basically flip this variable on its head. Because right now this is raw, but effectively that would be you doing, I'm going to change that to a 1, to a 2, to a 1, to a 1, to a 5.
Right, and that's where you're saying you could get messed up because you might forget. Whereas if you add the new column and it has like recoded attitude 3, so why did you say same was better at first?
Oh, if I said same was better, mea culpa. No, I don't prefer same. I like to keep raw data like this is what the people told me. And if I want to interpret it, I can create new variables which aid my interpretation and analysis. But otherwise, I don't want to change these numbers at all. Like you can look at this first respondent. That's an agreement, and a disagreement. An agreement, a disagreement, an agreement, I don't know. But 117 seems like it's the right pattern where all of those things would be positive. Because remember, smiley face, frowny face. This is like anti-frowny, otherwise known as smiley.
So you prefer recode into a different
I absolutely do, yeah. Yeah. So, oh wait, I'm getting better at that. So recode into a different variable. Attitude 3 is the variable. The new name I could just call it @3r. Underscore, you can have spaces in your stuff. So @3_r, old and new values. Old value 1, new value 7. Value 2, new value 6, add. And I could do that 3 to 5, 4 would stay the same. You can do it like this, all the way down, so that 3 becomes 5. And I could do this the whole way. I'm going to show you the other thing, though, and this is part of the learning the syntax. What don't you like? I don't want that label there. Include all cases. What don't you like about this output? Yeah, okay. Don't need this. Whenever it says data set activate, you don't need that. But this is effectively what I don't need this in here either. This is effectively the command. I'm going to recode attitude 3 into a new variable, attitude 3r. Note, period is here. So we have this 11 through 14 is all the same sentence. It's all the same piece of code. I'm recoding attitude 3, 1 into 7, 2 into 6, 3 into 5, but I didn't complete it. I just know how the sentence structure works now. And I can say 4 equals 4, 5 equals 3, 6 equals 2, 7 equals 1. And then when I run this line, I don't even need this here either. I don't have to get rid of it. It'll run the same. I just cleaned up my syntax. When I run this, it's going to create a new variable, attitude 3r, by replacing 1s for 7s and so on. So run it. The list of variables to be recorded includes the name of a non-existent variable. Oh, all right. So let's create the variable. I don't like this. Oh, that's insanity. Those are strange.
That backslash supposed to be there?
Yeah, it's a good question. Rachel Fisher for the win. Sort of. Looks like it was not supposed to be there. All right. Yeah, that slash or backslash wasn't supposed to be there. But this is yeah, this is the same command we were working on, except it didn't have the slash. Now, some of the stuff that I did there behind the scenes a little bit, this line isn't necessary. That was me troubleshooting incorrectly. This is all you need to do in order to recode this into this reverse coded item. And we can see that we've done it's like there were no 4s. There were no 4s. But what was a 7 is now a 1. What was a 1 is now a 7. And there's zeros everywhere else. This diagonal right here says that nothing else got recoded into anything else. So that line for recoding 1s into 7s and 7s into 1s looks like this. This is me just noting that I checked to make sure it works. Take a deep breath and circle around. Are we grabbing what's going on here? Is this new? Is this different? Is this challenging? Are we losing focus? I'm trying to understand how my communication's going here. Making sense?
Can you explain the diagonal line again?
Oh, this was just me running a cross tab right here. This was saying that I have the 2 variables, and this is nothing more than checking my work, which is to say what the values for the old variable and what the new variable are. That if the old value was 1, the new value is 7. The old value was 2, the new value is 6, and so on. And that indicates to me I probably should have put a 3 in there somewhere in the code. But all this is just checking my work. Recoding. All right, what's the next one? What's the next one? Was it on 3? Are we on 3?
Yeah.
3 or 4? 3? All right, talk to me.
So for 3, when it talks about the correlation matrix, for the 3 different variables, do you want that all in one matrix, or do you want 3 different matrices? So that matrices, like one for each variable.
No, that's one.
Okay.
That's one matrix. So before performing an index, you need to make sure all 3 items are underlying the same construct. Now there's different tools. There's another, we may have learned about alpha as significance level in 217, but there's another alpha statistic which we'll not use in here, but is effectively the same thing as inner item correlation. But for us, all I want to do is know whether or not attitude 1, attitude 2, and attitude 3 are correlated. And I've got one matrix right there. And it looks like one of those 3 variables is not correlated with the other 2. We have attitude 3 here. Attitude 1 is always going to be perfectly correlated with itself. Attitude 2 with itself. Attitude 3 with itself. 1 is correlated with 2. 1 is negatively correlated with 3. 2 is correlated with 1, negatively correlated with 3. 3 is negatively correlated to the other 2. This looks like it could be problematic or not if we can remember 5 minutes ago. You understand why this is not problematic?
We
You just
flipped it.
recoded it. So you have to use the other one.
We recoded it, so we have to use the other one. It doesn't look like it changed much. Because the signs flip. But anyway. I guess I'm doing your assignment for you. Let's work on number 4 now.
I have a question.
Please.
In the chart, it has both, like it has Pearson, Sig, something,
Mhm.
and then another thing, I don't remember.
Mhm.
The P value is the Pearson value,
Nope.
or is it the Sig?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the 3 pieces of information that are provided here, I'm just going to go to the chalkboard, but let's do this right. So let's put this back in here, paste it as it is. Each one of these things, and I'll hide this one because it's not as good. This. Let's stretch this a little bit. Three pieces of information. Pearson product moment correlation, the correlation or relation between two things. That's R. We may have learned about the correlation. That's the correlation, R, the R value. R ranges from -1 to +1. Where a -1 or a +1 indicates a perfect correlation, either perfectly negative or perfectly positive. The significance value, this is otherwise known as your p-value. And when it comes to p, what are we looking for? Yeah, clear, 0.05 or less. So we can think of p being less than 0.1 as having some evidence. Sometimes people call this marginally significant. P should be italicized, by the way, but P should be italicized. P is less than 0.05 is what we would call strong evidence, and this is really the industry standard. P less than 0.01 is very strong evidence. What does N stand for?
Population.
Nope, it's not population.
Sample size.
Sample size. Now that's big N. I may have taught you the convention is lowercase n. Lowercase for sample, uppercase for population. We don't have the population of 100 and some odd million people who watch the Super Bowl. We have a sample of 99. N is number of things. So number of observations, N. 99 observations, that's our sample size. So we have R, the correlation. We have the p-value. And we have N size.
So in task 3, when you describe your correlations, what do you want us to comment on the Pearson correlation and on the p-value?
Yes. In terms of interpreting the p-value, this is how you interpret the p-values. In terms of the correlation, there's a 0 is no correlation. something around 0.25, and this is really plus or minus, because it can be a positive or a negative correlation. Plus or minus 0.25, we call this a weak correlation. Something around 0.5 is moderate. And it really depends on what arena you are in. And let's say -1. That's what we're after for correlations. Now, the correlation between smoking and lung cancer mortality is something around 0.6. A lot of times in social science, and marketing is a social science, moderate correlations, something in the range of 0.5 to 0.7, are about as strong as they get. You rarely see real correlations above 0.75. Occasionally, you'll see them in like the 0.9 range, but not in industry research. If you see them that high, it's likely the effect of asking nearly identical questions. And I say nearly identical questions, I mean it's like, how many minutes did you watch the Super Bowl? And then like a couple questions later, do you remember how many minutes did you watch the Super Bowl? It's sort of like the same question. And then we just sort of provided slightly different answers for a couple people. That's how you get a correlation at 0.9. But in terms of these correlations, yeah, I mean, even here, 0.88, that's a real strong correlation. We had a 0.67, a 0.88, a 0.60. Those are really the only correlation values we have. Otherwise, we've just got all of these significance values are less than 0.01. And these are all in the strong to moderate range.
So when you say strength, you mean correlation?
Exactly. Correlation, this is akin to your strength modifier. Sorry, your strength. And how did you describe this, Rachel? Yeah, your significance here, because your p-value is AKA significance. Let's keep it rolling.
For task 4, you ask to report the mean, standard deviation, minimum value, maximum value, and then you ask us to, like, what do these tell? Like, you ask what do these estimates tell you about this variable? We started commenting on them, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily what you want. Could you explain a little about what kind of an explanation you want for that question?
Okay.
Like, is it something as simple as, like, if we have, like, ours, like we found that the minimum value was 1, which I thought to mean that would tell us that not all the respondents, although we understood. Like, I'm not 100% sure, like, what we should be commenting on.
Okay. I would, at the very least, report those values. You got those values, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4 discrete. There's going to be like a 1.33, a 1.67 and stuff like that. Or, you know, there'll be decimals here because we're taking an average across these things. And that's how decimals work.
So, like, when we look at the mean, we said, like, we kind of stated, like, where on, like where on the scale of, like, levels it's at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's
So if you got a mean of 5.5 or a mean of 2.5, Now, a mean of 5.5 means people typically smiley face. Something around here, people typically frowny face.
So that's like enough for that response.
I would probably put a little bit more in terms of using your words as opposed to frowny face and smiley face. I don't know. I don't know what's obvious. I'm learning. But the dispersion will also give you a sense of how dispersion is synonymous with how spread out the data is. So if it's very spread out, that means there's a lot of variety in the answers. If it's a small standard deviation, then there's not a variety in terms of answers. The standard deviation was 0, that means everybody gave the same answers.
So like when we looked at the dispersion, we found that it was skewed towards one side. So should we make a comment about how like the dispersion doesn't even touch upon one side, doesn't even touch one pole of the scale? Is that something that's relevant?
I think when you look at tasks 4 and 5, you'll get a better sense because you're going to be making a histogram out of this data.
Wait, this is task 4.
Right, and in 5 we're doing a histogram.
Okay.
So this to me is central tendency, dispersion, and shape.
Okay.
Those are the 3 things that help me understand the nature of a variable, whether that variable is an index or whether that variable is a mean. I can show you real quick what I'm talking about here. I'll just look at attitude 1, for example. Because I want to create a histogram so we can talk about that real quick.
So you're doing a lot of work in Excel, but you had asked us to, when we submit this, you want CSS files and then possibly a Word document.
Yep.
So
Whatever helps you tell the story.
Okay. That being said, you said both in our syntax and in the Word documents, however we do that. Would you prefer that our explanations for the answers be that you have
No, I want your explanations as much as you can to be documented in your syntax as comments.
Okay.
So why are you doing what you're doing? This is, or I don't remember which task this was, but task 3, compute correlations for these variables.
So right now we have something similar to that when we create task 3,
Yep.
whatever, and then you ask for you have some questions and we have a few lines.
Yep.
Quick sentence to answer those questions.
Yep.
And then we're using a Word document kind of.
Yeah, in terms of putting it all, the appendix is fine. I would prefer to look at one document. I'd prefer to be able to just go through, run your syntax. I can see the comment, I can see your justification, I see your interpretation, and I see the output. Because whenever I run syntax, the command I ran was and what it generated, and that can include comments. So if I can run your syntax, I can see your explanation here, the output will be generated, and then I'll be able to also read here any interpretation or comments that you make. Running your syntax.
So by running the syntax, it'll show up in the output.
Yep.
And that's what you want. Right?
Yep.
The output.
Oh, I don't need anything printed out. I need you to
Okay, but
to email me the SPSS
so
stuff.
it'll be in the output.
The syntax. I can run your syntax and generate your output because I have the same
Okay.
data.
So can you get those if you generate any of those charts? Can those get put into the syntax? Sure.
You don't have to put them into syntax.
Because when you run it,
It will generate it for me.
if we just send you our
Syntax.
syntax,
Yep.
then you'll run it and you'll get this up for
Exactly.
our.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't need to see your output. I can run your syntax and see what it creates.
I think my question was answered during that, but you don't need to see those charts for reference. You just will generate the data yourself.
And he'll get this up.
So our Word document appendix isn't necessary.
Not really, no, because in task 5, you're going to create a histogram, and when I run whatever function you use to generate a histogram in here, which is going to come from somewhere like probably frequencies, charts, histograms. So when I run this, and you say, this is task 12, we make histogram. I run this because you sent it to me. I see the histogram that you create in the output, and you can tell me that looks kind of funny. I don't know what's going on there, but that's something wrong with the data. But otherwise, like I can look at what you've generated, and it makes some sense. But I also have your comments here, which says this is task 12. We make histogram. You comment on that, and then it executes. I don't know why we have a value in here that's 30 though. Something doesn't look right. Oh, I mean, that might be part of the assignment. I mean, that looks like.
It asks for outliers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not. I mean, nothing. Don't pay any attention to exactly what you just saw on the screen vis-a-vis outliers or erroneous records in your data. That's probably it.
So going back to task 4, when you, like, would you, like, comment on the minimum and maximum values? Like, hypothetically, the maximum value is, like, 14. What would you say about that? Like, how do you comment on that? Like, what's relevant?
The average value being?
So the average is 3, the standard deviation is 2, the minimum value is 1, the maximum value is 14. Now you ask, what are these estimates?
If this is an average, this is an average of 3 items, 1 to 7. Right?
Yeah.
How do you take the average of things where all 3 are supposed to be maxed at 7 and get an average of 14?
No, a maximum value.
Right. So let's say we have 3 items, and I score a 7, a 7, and a 7. That's the maximum score for all 3 items, right? Not as an average.
Okay. So an average maximum was 14. Like, so like someone had a maximum of 21, someone had a max. Like I get that.
You can't, though.
So the maximum can't be 14.
Right.
But the maximum is 14.
But it can't be.
So then how do I comment?
That's indicative of something.
Yes.
Oh,
You just obviously didn't calculate it properly.
No.
oh, so then now at this point when it says, do you have any undesirable values? It's in the maximum doesn't make sense.
I'm saying the maximum doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so in the question when it says, like later on, it prompts us and says, do you have any undesirable values? You can say the maximum value is undesirable. Doesn't make sense. Like, is that what it's prompting us?
That's what it's getting you towards.
Because I wasn't there. That was
Would you agree that this row 39 here is broken?
Yes.
Now, if I were to create an average, the average score for this respondent of 7, 30, and 7, the average is 14.67. If the maximum you can score on any one item is 7, 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21 divided by 3. The maximum for your index should still be 7. If someone gets to 14, that's not a problem with your analysis. That's a problem with your data. Could be a problem with your analysis, but it's more likely indicative that there's something wrong with your data. For example, I just did that here when I created this histogram, this 30,000 foot look at attitude 2. I was expecting to see something that looks like here we go. Oh. I was expecting to see something that looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because those are the only things that people can provide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But when I generated this histogram, I saw that somebody gave me a value all the way over here. That looked funny to me because I thought the maximum could only be exactly. So then I come back to my data, whether it's in SPSS or Excel. And I look at column 2, and I see that the average for these, well, all the way down, there's a row that's missing. The average is 4, that makes sense. The count is 99. That sort of makes sense. It looks like it should be 100, but whatever. How about minimum and maximum? And now I see the maximum here is 30, and I thought the maximum should be 7. I keep using Excel because I know it's a way for me to look at this data pretty straightforward. And this at the bottom here is called the status bar. So if I just highlight a bunch of stuff in column D, I can get its characteristics. There's 99 observations, an average of 4.1, a minimum of 1, and a maximum of 30. So that's some things that don't look right to me. At least one of those things doesn't look right to me. As a reminder, this is all being documented, will be uploaded to YouTube. So if there's moments over the course of the thing where you're like, about halfway through, I lost track, or there was something where we started working on problem 3, all you got to do, go back and know, like right now, we're at, what, minute 62, or something like that. So if this conversation confuses you now, minute 62 is where we are.
So then in task 5, it asks us to remove outliers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something as simple, like how?
Delete them.
Okay. Is it as simple as like in the, so not, obviously not in Excel, you would go to the.
You could do it either way. I mean, this is part of this procedure is up to you, the way you feel safe, clean, and accurate. So this is the raw data. Maybe you want to create a copy of this file, delete the records you think are outliers, for example, wherever this one was. Somewhere in here, there's 30. You could delete this one, create a new save file, and note that you eliminated a particular record. If you wanted to be fancy, I wouldn't be fancy. I would just delete the record. But if you wanted to be fancy, you could say, in the syntax, exclude case where respondent ID equals 38. You could put that in there, but that seems like it's above your pay grade. What seems right for you would be to just delete the record, whether it's in your SAV file or your XLS file, and just say, hey, we've eliminated a couple of records which were garbage. This is sort of like your question from 1130, which is what do we do with these records that are meaningless? Well, you delete them and then you save a new data file, right?
When you say SAB, SLS, all those acronyms, what do those mean?
Mm-hmm. Cool. In Excel, that's an XLS file. In SPSS, we have syntax, data, and output. Syntax is .sps, data is .sab, output is .spl. Great question. Industry runs on acronyms. You've got about 6 months when you start a job to ask about any and all acronyms, because people will ask for your bluff, and they're not asking you to fool them. Anybody heard bluff before? Bottom line up front. What's your bluff? For TLDR, too long, didn't read. I need 7 seconds, not 7 hours. Continue.
Just general question. I was wondering if there's any chance that we could like be in a computer lab on Thursday, if we were to like keep working on SPSS stuff. That way we can like have it in front of us, so it's more like hands-on.
Okay.
I don't know if that's possible, but
I'll see if there's a room available. Thoughts class-wide, is that something that would help us out in this? Yeah? Okay. Send me an email reminder, please.
can I know?
Yeah, no, send that now. Yeah. Are you telling me that none of you are multitasking at all here?
Yes.
What else? Want to keep moving? What else we got? Things we loop back on, other specific questions. I feel like, Caroline, you've maybe gotten a bunch of the questions answered, but don't know that you've got a whole lot of them asked.
Yeah, we just kind of made it to task 3, so our main questions for that you already answered. But
Cool.
We still need to kind of go through the next couple ones and then I maybe ask you on Thursday. But.
10-4, Liz?
For the part in task 3, when you say form an index from the mean of your 3 attitude measures and name it, how do you name something?
You compute it. So I could say compute new variable Liz equals 0. Once I run that, every record in my SAV file, every record in my data file, each of these rows is a record. We're going to create a new variable, and that variable is going to be called new var Liz. And every single person is going to have a value 0. And then if I want to, let's say, I don't have to start there. I typically do is just, I got to find the right words, not call it Jeff crazy. Quality assurance procedures, following the same steps to avoid the same errors. I could just say compute new var Liz2 equals sum of attitude 1, attitude 2. And then there's going to be a new variable that just says new var Liz2. Or I could say new var Liz3 equals attitude 1 plus attitude 2. Or I could say compute variable from the transform menu. The target variable is going to be attitude, new var Liz4. The numeric expression is attitude 1 plus attitude 2 minus attitude 3 plus importance, paste. And then it does exactly that. It says compute new var Liz4 equals attitude 1 plus attitude 2 minus attitude 3 plus importance. I run this line. The log says I have run this line. And then when I look at my SAV, my data file, this is the output. These are the values that new var Liz4 took on. Anything from -1 to +43, depending on what it was. So if you ever are stuck here, because I will just type things because I know the language. I've tried to put hints in here. For example, analyze, transform. If you want to create or compute, transform, you can compute a variable, click through and paste. If you want to create frequencies, you click through and you paste. And then it creates that function for you, whatever you were trying to do. But you can click through all those point and click menus. You don't have to type. And then just hit paste.
I don't know if you, like, as an instructor, do you have any, like, resources that you've received about SPSS that, like, kind of outline some of the basic, you know, functions that it has? I mean, like, we've been using, like, the internet to try to help, which is great. Like, there are a lot of things available to us, but I don't know if, like, you have possession of something that is kind of like a easy tips for SPSS.
So the ones that I think, the ones that I wrote are the ones that I think are key here. So that would be analysis procedures and analysis basics. No, wait. There wasn't here. It was SPSS crash course. This is
Okay.
So in terms of the basics, this is really what I think is key. So I'd come back to here. Otherwise, the internet does provide good resources, but the versions change so quickly. There's not really like a book like CAB, because it sort of goes from 0 to 100 here too. If you want, you come to the help menu and look for the command syntax reference. This is a giant PDF, which is searchable, but then has like detailed documentation on all the different types of commands, whether it's compute, whether it's recode. I think this is a good resource because it gives you examples. I don't know that I find the explanations particularly valuable. But in terms of the things that are going to help you navigate this assignment, some of this stuff may be a little bit higher level than you're after, but this is where I would go for some of the basics in terms of the commands you need to have.
And was that in the SPSS module? Sorry, I just didn't see it.
Oh, apologies. It's good questions. This is module 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to see what I can do, and that really is like close to our time here. I'll see what I can do about trying to schedule a computer lab. No promises. Like I don't know what we can do there. There used to be an open source version of this called PSPP that anybody could just download, but its functionality is kind of limited. Free versus an $8,000 individual license. I'll take free, generally speaking. But if we can't make it back, what I really suggest is that if you're working on this in a lab, save your SPS, your syntax file. Either email it to me or have it ready to go in Slack. And then you can just show me what you've written. And we can go back to this conversation we had about what do I need. And I can show you, I'll just run your syntax and see what happens. And then I can talk you through, not just it's not about meeting my expectations, I suppose, entirely, but I mean, it's what you're after. But I can say, this looks good. I want you to fix this. You're the first steps in the fresh snow. So I don't have anything that's an exemplar for you. You're making that. But thank you for your bravery and your continued success and learning. Other questions? Let me know. Outside of that, yay November.
So four, or whatever you're at.
Yeah, do you guys want, I mean, I'll leave you on stuff. So if you guys want to meet at like 4:15.
Could you guys?
I can.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I just have to like, from like 7 to 9. Yeah, I don't mind.
Maybe not.
A bunch.
In place of session,
I'm free after 5:15.
Oh, I have, a presentation at 6:40.
Yeah, I have one
So
right.
before now.
Yeah.
So I can't.
Yeah, I'm assuming we're.
Back to first.